recently picked up some of these Final Faction toy parts from the Dollar Tree. They're really great for kit bashing. And I really enjoyed these backpacks. The one on the right actually inspired this entire build. For the base of the droid, I'm using this injection molded plastic kit here. It's for like a robot dummy thing. I got this one online. I've seen them all over the place from different sellers. I think they're all just knockoffs of each other. I believe the original is a 3D printed kit that you can print and build yourself. This wasn't the best quality, so it was kind of hard to put together. There was a lot of cleaning up of the injection molded parts. But once everything was put together, it acted as a really, really good base to build these humanoid droids and robots from. So I'll definitely be using this in the future. I will put some links down in the description to where you can find one of these model kits for yourself, as well as links to every other material and tool that I use in the video. They are Amazon affiliate links, which basically just means that if you buy something through those links, I do get a small commission and you pay nothing extra. So it is a win-win and it helps me keep these videos coming. Also, in a very small, almost insignificant way, it takes a little bit of money away from Jeff Bezos. And that feels kind of good. I have my little box of Greeblies here from those toys and other little bits and pieces I had. And the first thing I do is just bulk out the legs with these Final Faction pieces. I knew that I wanted to build out the legs to look really strong because as a medical droid that's carrying around either lots of material and medical pieces or potentially people, their legs need to be really strong in order to carry that weight. So I'm just taking these Final Faction pieces and cutting them up and then reapplying them to the legs. The nice thing is, because this is really cheap plastic, it cuts really well and you can kind of adjust it and customize it to whatever you'd like. But they don't take paint super well, so you just have to make sure that you scuff them up with a wire brush or with sandpaper really well before painting, just to make sure everything sticks and it doesn't chip off later. On the original toy, the chest piece goes like this, but I actually prefer it the other way around. So what I'm going to do is cut off that original chest piece, keep it for a future project, and turn the whole thing over and use it like this. I'm going to use this part for the back of the droid and cut up some other greeblies to attach to build things up. I think I'm going to call these thrusters, but I'm not sure yet. I'm working on the head of the droid now. These are just more final faction pieces. For some reason, I really like droids and robots that have singular eyes, and so this one will also have one single eye. I drilled a hole in the base of the head, and this will attach to the original neck connector piece and make it really easy to attach everything. Ah, the backpack that started it all. These are completely hollow on the back, so I am going to fill these with a bit of milliput, which is a 2-part epoxy, and then press it into the back of my droid to make sure everything sits flush, and will make it easier to glue later once everything's painted. I also use a little bit of milliput to attach these shoulder pauldrons because there wasn't a whole lot of area to glue to, so the milliput adds some space. This is just some armature wire folded into this staple shape, just to add some extra detail. Once I get the pose to how I like it, I'm going to use this ultra thin, like almost water consistency super glue and flood all the joints with it. And this will keep everything really solid and keep everything from moving. I made this medical cross out of some really thin styrene and just super glued it on. Using a soldering iron, I make some scuff marks and some battle wounds. If you're going to do this yourself, make sure that you're wearing a respirator and doing this in a well-ventilated area. You can sort of hear in the background of this my fan going. I'm blowing it out my window of my shop, and I'm also wearing a respirator. This plastic melts really gross. It smells bad and is really not good for you, so stay protected. Moving on to the companion droid. This is a piece of a children's toy that I took apart during my last video. And this will be the base that the companion droid is built from. I am going to utilize this compartment here, so stick around to the end of the video to find out what's inside. I really wasn't sure what to do with the open holes in the side, so I ended up just filling them with milliput and thinking I would do something with them later, which I did not do, but I think it still turned out pretty cool without anything on the side. I knew I wanted the companion to be bipedal as well, and so I'm using some pieces of Final Faction toys as well as these pieces of sprue from the original model kit for the droid. So don't throw away those trees and those little cages that hold all the pieces, because there's some good plastic there. For the tail, I'm using a piece of armature wire and some electronic scraps, as well as some heat shrink tubing to hold everything together. For both models, I start with a matte black primer and dry brush some silver on. I started with the companion droid first because I really wasn't sure how I was going to paint these two droids at the beginning. I knew I was going to paint them red and white because those are the two classic colors that are associated with medics, but I really wasn't sure the patterns I was going to use or how much of each color I wanted. So starting with the companion droid was the easiest because it had the most flat spaces and it was a little more forgiving when it came to paint jobs. Recently, I've been watching the YouTube channel Gamey Builds, who is a fantastic artist who also builds dioramas and models like this. And with every model or diorama he builds, he writes a short story and reads it while he's painting. They're always really intriguing and really fantastic videos, so if you haven't already, go check out Gamey Builds. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. But for now, I was inspired to write my own short story that gives a little background on these characters and what they're doing out here in this rocky landscape. The first rule of Isaac Asimov's 3 Rules of Robotics is that a robot may not injure a human being or, through an action, allow a human being to come to harm. When the Automaton Corporation created the medical droid units in 2073, they were taught to help treat and save human life by any means possible. But what happens when there's no one left to save? When you're the lone survivor? Who do they send to save you? This is the story of MD-206 and their faithful companion, ATLU-206. Or as the guys in the repair shop back home called them, labbies. Not only because they acted as mobile laboratories in the field, but also for their canine-like characteristics. Labbies being a reference to the Labrador dog species still found on Earth to this day. The medical transport ship rumbled and shook gently as it flew over the charred landscape of the war-torn nation. Nothing on the ground moved and no signs of life could be seen, at least not from 10,000 feet in the air. These desolate lands were the product of a decade-old war that had left deep scars in the landscape, unable to fully heal in the short time since the last bombings. MD-206 swayed gently as the ship slowly cruised along. Another 400 miles to go before they'd reach their drop point. The droid was suspended to the ceiling with heavy chains, locked into the connection points on their shoulders. A thick power cable attached to the back of their head reached up and disappeared into the rafters, providing power and information as well as any updated commands from the brass back home. Its companion, Labby, was neatly folded and stored just below its dangling feet like a sleeping dog at the foot of one's bed. An identical power cable protruding from its body snaked its way to the side of the ship. The transport ship may have been unmanned, but that didn't mean MD-206 was alone. Surrounding them were 5 other medical droids and their corresponding ATL units. The numbers varied between the droids as they were constantly being taken in and out of combat and the repair shop. So when a team was put together, it was often a mix of whatever units were available at the time. Units 639, 32, 78, 854, and 44 all slowly swayed together with 206. Their dormant, hanging bodies looked almost haunting in the low flickering light of the ship's interior. The combined sound of their humming internal electronics mixed with the creaks and groans of the heavy transport ship would have been an eerie sound to hear if anyone with ears were on board.
Stabilize. Stabilize. Stabilize.
The mechanical voice blared loudly in the head of 206. The internal gyroscopic system inside the droid had detected a rapid acceleration, the feeling of falling. Falling? That couldn't be right. The ship wasn't even close to its final destination. They were still 378.2 miles away to be exact. That was the last coordinates 206 had received from the ship. But sure enough, they were tumbling through the air and gaining speed. A mechanical voice still repeating in their head, yelling at them to stabilize. As they arranged their body in an outstretched form, utilizing the thrusters protruding from their back, the voice slowly became quieter and then altogether stopped. Now stabilized, but still falling, 206 was able to look around and take into account what had happened. Looking up and off to the left, they saw the transport ship they had just been on engulfed in flames and billowing smoke. It too was falling through the sky, though it seemed to be accelerating at a lower speed. Maybe some of the propulsion units were still intact. Questions started cycling through 206's processor. What had happened to the ship? Was it an attack? A malfunction? How would they escape the ship unharmed? Where was the rest of the drop team? Where was Labby?
Elevation 6,000 feet.
A voice once again shot through 206's head. Frantically, they looked around, scanning the sky for ATLU-206, turning their body in a 360-degree circle, but coming up empty.
Elevation 4,000 feet. Prepare for landing.
Again, the voice shot through its head. Its protocol demanded it start the landing process, but how would that be possible without Labby? Normally, during a successful med drop, the droids dropped one at a time, partnered with their lab unit. On descent, they would hold the rail system under their ATL unit, and once they hit 3,000 feet, a built-in parachute would automatically deploy from the unit and carry them down to safety. Without Labby, 206 was going to be in for one hell of an impact when they reached the ground.
500 feet till ripcord. 400. 300. 200.
MD-206 looked around frantically one last time, desperately searching for its partner.
100 feet till ripcord.
If 206 had been a spiritual droid, it would have prayed to whatever mechanical god it could to save it. But instead, they closed the mechanical shutter over their eye and accepted their fate. After all, what's death to a robot? When you can no longer be repaired? When your internal processor turns off for the last time? 206 had served its makers well. It had saved countless lives over the years and dropped into hundreds of battlegrounds without hesitation. 206 was a hero to many, and if this was its final drop, then that was okay. The wind whipped past the mechanical body as they plummeted closer to the surface. Eye closed and prepared for impact. Suddenly, they felt their body pushed forward as if someone had run into them from behind. Opening their shutter, 206 looked up to see none other than Labby falling directly above them. A section of heavy cording still protruding from its back. Tattered and frayed wires hanging from the end. To some, it may have even looked like the tail of a dog, wagging in the wind. 206 reached up quickly and grabbed the bars under Labby, their metal fingers gripping tightly and locking in place as drop protocol kicked in.
Ripcord deployed.
Within an instant, a small parachute shot from Labby's back. A second later, a much larger parachute unfurled above the two droids. A large red circle with a white cross in the center. The universally known sign in these parts that help was on its way. The two slowly circled their way to the ground, now at a much safer descent speed, eventually landing with a thud in a small cloud of dust in the middle of a barren wasteland, a skeleton of a once grand city reduced to rubble by the wars of humans. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for. What's inside? It's medical supplies. I know, big surprise. But I even made these tiny little IV bags out of some plastic, which I thought were really cool. Hey, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, put them down in the comment section and I will try to get back to you. If you liked the format of this video with this short story, let me know. I may do more in the future, I may not. I am really not sure yet. I'm still figuring out the mic system here on my computer, so I apologize if there's any weird sound things that happen during this video. I hope they don't happen in the future. Anyways, enjoy yourself, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much.